FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C. A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. I want to start off this week talking about some action in the House of Representatives, specifically the House Appropriations Committee worked on a bill that was advanced by the House Ag Appropriations Subcommittee last week. Phil, dealing with the spending for the USDA and the Food and Drug Administration, specifically through some policy riders that are really going to have some impacts, or could have some impacts on ag policy.
Right. Well, this again, as you said, this is the budget bill for USDA, Food and Drug Administration, and actually the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And so this is one of the best chances that lawmakers have to express their will on the departments and the agencies. Several interesting things in the bill this year. Trying to deal with the biotech labeling issue and the fact that food companies right now as we speak are starting to roll out labels that say produced with genetically engineered ingredients. A lot of concern in agriculture and the biotech industry that this is going to create a stigma for biotech crops. And so there is $3 million earmarked in the bill for FDA with help from USDA to promote acceptance among consumers of biotech, to convince them of the safety and the benefits of the crops. There was a vote in committee. The Democrats would like to strip that out. They pushed for a vote. They lost by 9 votes. Only one Republican voted to strip that out. There was another interesting vote on whether to stop USDA from issuing new rules on regulations on contracts between growers and livestock and poultry processors.
Yeah, and if you remember last year, HBO entertainer John Oliver actually made quite a bit of noise about this. And really, you could make the argument that he kind of got the ball rolling for this conversation to need to be happening right now, because he was arguing for the inclusion, or because the last couple of years the Appropriations Committee had been blocking this GIPSA rule, and he started making some noise about it, and all of a sudden the GIPSA rule was back in action, and so now they're in the process of really doing some rulemaking and getting the thing going again. But then there's some more House action to try and get that rule stripped right back from where it was.
Right. This battle is going to go on for a while too, because Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack really wants to get this GIPSA rule, as we call it, these regulations, out the door before he leaves office. So there's not a lot of time left to do that. And as you mentioned, the fact that they didn't get the prohibition, Congress didn't get that prohibition in USDA's budget for this year, means that they can go forward. So the bill now contains this prohibition. It's back in there. The vote was very close, however. In committee, it was 26 to 24. There were 5 Republicans who actually voted against it. In other words, they wanted to let USDA to go forward with writing the regulations. There'll be a lot of opposition to it in the Senate, no doubt, as well. So it's a long way from being decided.
Yeah, and this, like Phil mentioned, this is by no means set in stone, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on as the appropriations process continues to unfold, both in the House and in the Senate. Who knows? There could be the full appropriations process this year. There could also be a continuing resolution at the end of the year. We'll be sure to keep you apprised of that information. But that's about where we're standing on that. I want to talk about the other chamber here for a brief second. Finally got a energy bill across the floor. This has been something that's been in the works for really quite some time. but finally were able to get the political situation just right in the upper chamber to actually get, it was something like 85 votes. It was a very high number of votes that they got on this energy bill.
Yeah, a huge margin. Was reflecting how much is in the bill. There was encouragement for fossil fuels, liquefied natural gas for Republicans, for Democrats. There's provisions in there for renewable power, and also an issue that's going to be one of the real sticking points when they get down to negotiating with the House to try to come up with a final version of that. And that's that the Senate bill would permanently authorize the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is the primary means that the government has of acquiring new lands out in the West. The cattle producers, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, is very concerned about that. They wanted to see a lot of the money earmarked for maintaining existing lands rather than acquiring additional lands. Of course, that when the fund is used to acquire new lands, that takes land that's out of production for cattle. So that'll be a major issue. Perhaps could be one of the biggest sticking points during the negotiations.
Yeah, so still kind of a long ways to go on that one, but now they at least have something to go to conference with. I mean, for a while they didn't even have that because there was a whole lot of political things going on. You might remember the Flint water situation got drug into that debate. A lot of things got attached on that energy bill. And before we wrap up here, I want to just briefly mention an effort in the Senate that our loyal followers will be very familiar with, the Waters of the U.S. rule. There's another effort in the Senate today, actually. We're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. Phil, another effort to try and repeal or some more legislative action on the Waters of the U.S. rule in the Senate.
Yeah, one more try, same result. The Republicans forced another vote today on stopping implementation of the WOTUS rule. It's now been put on hold by the courts, but if the court stays were to be lifted, this amendment that was offered in the Senate was aimed at keeping the rule from being enforced. Republicans, they needed 60 votes. They fell 4 votes short, basically the similar margin to what we've seen before. We had a couple of votes in November. It just points up that this issue is not going to be settled until there's a new president, or possibly more likely until court cases end.
Yeah, so still a long ways to go before we have any kind of resolution on the Waters of the U.S. rule, but some more legislative action on that, and we wanted to make sure we made you aware. But I think that's going to about do it for the ag news that we're going to be discussing on this program for this week. I want to just briefly mention our condolences to the great state of Minnesota, as well as music lovers everywhere, on the passing of Prince. My goodness, what a tragedy. But I think that's going to do it this week for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. For Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.